We'll come to perhaps one of the most critical parts of this evening, the Christmas story. I'm a communicator. I tell stories for a living. But Christmas stories is a 2,000-year story. So I was struggling, how can I make Christmas relevant to today? What's in it for me as someone who's living in modern day America? How a little baby born a couple centuries ago, what relevance does his birth still continue to hold for me? These were some of the questions I was asking. And so before I actually share with you in what I call the elements of Christmas, I want to tell you a story that happened in the World Sales Championships. You know how this world has, pizza eating contests, global pizza eating contests, global pie eating contests and stuff. So there was this world championship for salespeople. So salespeople from all over the world competed, and there were 3 finalists. USA, as you can expect, made it to the finals. Britain made it to the finals. And surprise, surprise, India also made it to the finals. So the 3 finalists were called to a one-day program and said, we'll give you 3 items to sell, and whoever sells the maximum on that day is the world's sales champion. Okay? The first American was a car salesman. And you know how supposedly car salesmen are slick and suave and sophisticated, and they just sell you stuff, right? So see, the American car salesman was given a few cars and said, if you can sell the maximum number of cars today and beat the other 2 guys, you're the world champion. The British man was an insurance salesman. You know, insurance guys are very smooth as well. So the British competitor was given insurance and said, the maximum number of insurances you sell today will determine whether you're the world champion. But the Indian guy, unfortunately, had a handicap. He had a speech problem. He was stammering. So how does a person with a speech impediment compete at a global sales championship? So everybody thought that Indian really didn't have a chance. So the whole day went by, and the judges were called to do the tallies. The American did extremely well, so he was pitted to be the winner. So they counted, and he must have sold about 75 cars. So he was rooted to be the winner. The Brit, unfortunately, came and sold more than the American. He sold about 100 insurance policies. This Indian guy who had the speech problem came and just blew away the American and the British. So the judges asked him, you have a speech impediment, how did you just outsmart the competitors? So the Indian guy just said, look, I decided to sell encyclopedias. And in modern day, we don't use encyclopedias, right? If you have a question, where do you go? You go to Google, right? Or if you're on an iPhone, you just check. How did you sell encyclopedias? So the Indian looked at him, the judges, and said, I took an encyclopedia from my car, knocked on a door, and when they opened, I said, will you please buy this, or should I stand here and read it for you? So every door he knocked, he just said, would you buy this, or shall I read it for you? And so he blew away the competition. We Indians are known to be adapters. Wherever we go, we adapt. But how is that story relevant to my story? Absolutely nothing. There's no relevance. But I wanted to share with you something very, very interesting that happened in Papua New Guinea about hundreds of years ago. There were 2 warring tribes in Papua New Guinea. And those tribes were so backward and so outdated, they used to use a lot of cruel methods to attack each other's tribes. There was no peace in the country. There was a tribe called the Sawi tribe, S-A-W-I, Sawi tribe. And those tribal people were known for the most vicious cannibalism that the country's ever seen. So into that country, somebody wanted to go and make a difference. The Sawi tribal people were so notorious for their killings. What they would do is actually, they would make friends with an enemy tribal person. They used to call it fattening the friendship. What they do is, they invite somebody from an opposing tribe, make friends with them, eat with them, dine with them, drink with them, give them gifts, and just slowly gain their trust, gain all the secrets of the tribe, and then just kill the man, and using the secrets go and kill the opposite tribe as well. This rivalries between tribes were killing people in Papua New Guinea. Into that country, an American by the name Don Richardson wanted to go and serve and bring modern medicine to them. What he discovered was that there was absolutely no trust between people. Everyone who would talk to them were wondering whether he is threatening me to someday kill me. So there was no trust at all. How do you go and make friends in that animosity, in that hostility, in that enmity, and try to make peace between tribes? He tried his best. And his story, in fact, you should check it out, is called Peace Child by Don Richardson. National Geographic made a documentary on him. All sorts of stories have been written about him as to how he brought peace into these warring tribes. He came up with this brilliant strategy that every tribal chief should take their firstborn. Listen to me, no imaginary person can come up with this. Every tribal chief would take their firstborn child and go to the warring tribe and give his son to the warring tribe and say, "This is my peace child." And in return, if that peace offering was acceptable, the other tribal chief would give that firstborn to the other tribe. As long as these two children were growing up in rival camps, there was absolute peace in the tribe. So the story of a peace child, how it transformed Papua New Guinea. Now if you look at 100 years later, Papua New Guinea is a completely transformed society. How a peace child brought peace to a country is a remarkable story. Look back 2,000 years to this metaphor of a crib. The crib that we see here was not just a regular crib where another child was born. Just like the peace child in Papua New Guinea, this child was born to bring peace between mankind and God. When the kids sang peace on earth and goodwill to men, the word peace was not accidental. The word peace was meant to heal the world. As we speak now, and I'm a communicator, right? I'm always in the media and I'm just trying to keep pace with world affairs. There are 90 wars going around the world. 90 active wars. I'm not even counting North Korea, South Korea conflict yet. That would make it 91. If the world is at war with each other, if countries are fighting against one another, the word peace is much needed in this world. Not only countries are fighting with one another, we have regions fighting with one another. You go into a particular country, there are polarities there. One state versus another state, one language versus another, one ethnic minority versus another. The word peace is much needed today. Not only am I talking globally against nations and tribes and regions, look around in families. The more wealthy we become, the more divisive we seem to become. And some of us who've been immigrants and who walked this lonely path of immigration across the seas and made this country a home here, we know what it means to always look back and pine for home where we had great things together. Some of us, as we struggle with some of the identity issues in our new homeland, how do we embrace our culture and hold on to this new culture? We are also at war with one another. So not only are nations at war, not only are regions at war, not only are families and relationships are at strife, often there is also a conclusion that I'm convinced more than anybody that even I am at war with myself. There are times when I really want to do the good thing, the right thing, but I seem to be at war with myself. So how does this peace child relate to me and bring peace? I always struggle with the word peace. In fact, I'm in love with that word peace. I called my newborn son 10 years ago Aman. And as those who know Hindi would know, Aman means peace. The first 7 years he did not live up to his name. We had more problems from his school saying, "Mr. Bupula, your son is beaten up, another kid." So the word Aman we gave our son because we wanted him to reflect peace that we so desire in our lives. And when Jesus was born, among the many names that were given to him was a term called Prince of Peace. Now, it's not a coincidence. This was prophesied a few hundreds of years earlier by Prophet Isaiah, and he said, he shall be called Prince of Peace. Look at the coincidence. If it's not divine design, I don't know what it is. Peace on earth and goodwill to men were the carols sung by the angels when Jesus was born. But he was to be called the Prince of Peace. And how did he give peace to the world? The whole world was expecting him to come in a royal blaze of glory. The whole world was expecting him to come with heavens parted and sound and fury and thunder, and we were just going to see his kingdom in a different way. But you know what? He was ready to say, surprise! He didn't come in a blaze of glory. He didn't come with sound and fury. He came like a little baby born in this manger. Now, when you look at a manger, what does it strike you as? Someone who chose not the royal path, but the most humble path. In fact, there's a verse that says, he did not consider equality with God as something that he should grasp and hold on to, but he readily gave his life for mankind. Now what it meant is, he relinquished his rights. Peace comes when you relinquish your rights and say, you know what, I'll take a higher path. Whenever you're in a relationship struggle, I mean, particularly if there are couples here, you know what I'm talking about. As Indians, we come with one cultural paradigm, and once we start making a life in the United States, our whole identity, our approach for relationships changes. How do we hold on to our rights determines the happiness in our family. So peace means somebody relinquishes his rights, and then he says, you know what, I'm willing to give my life. A rose never holds on to its perfume and says, this perfume belongs to me. This fragrance belongs to me. And so when this little baby was born, Mother Mary looked at the crib and said, this crib that represents the birth of the Almighty God, she was told that one day this baby will grow up and give his life for mankind. So every time she looked at the crib, just think, if you were Mary, there are many mothers here. Just imagine if you were a mother holding the baby Jesus in your hands and you looked at the crib. You know, the other side of the crib was the cross. 33 years later, this little baby that she was holding was going to die a cruel death. Only to bring peace to you and me. My son and I keep talking all the time. He's now 10, but he talks like a teenager. So I'm bracing myself for teenage questions. I keep talking to him about the birth of Christ, and it's not about what he can get every Christmas. So 4 months from Christmas, he starts making a list. Then I try to tell him, Christmas is not about what you get. Christmas is not about what you do. You go around singing carols, or yes, there are elements of that because they remind us. But at the heart of Christmas was someone who wanted to give peace to you and me. You know, we American Indians, or Indian Americans who've made our home here, we are a very chosen community in many ways. You know, some of the statistics that were released was that 14 million Indians migrated to Western countries in the last 10 years. Think of it. That makes 5% of the US population. And each time we make that journey of faith, a leap of faith, what we are saying is, I'm willing to stake my future on a dream that this country represents, the American dream. Whatever, I want to stake my claim on my future. And when we look at this little baby, he staked his whole life for one purpose, that he'll bring peace. So today, if there's one word that I'd like to leave with you, and as you forget about whatever we discussed, saw everything, if there's one word that I'd like you to remember, it is of this little baby who was born to bring peace. So if you're looking at relationship struggles in your family, in your personal life, in wherever you are, in your corporate world, the corporate world is so full of strife, right? You're always trying to protect your back. There's restlessness, there's anxiety, you're frustrated at times. We're not called to live life like that. We're called to live a life of peace. In fact, there's a word that says, this baby was born to give us life in abundance. And abundance doesn't mean the abundance of possessions, abundance of net worth, abundance of wealth, abundance of whatever we acquire. It's about how we are at peace with who we are. So this evening, if there's one promise that I want to share with you, it is that you are so important that even if you were the only person on earth, even if you were the only person on earth, and young children are here, even if you were the only child on earth, there would have still been Christmas. Did you know that? We often don't talk about humankind. Humankind is important, but at the heart of humankind is an individual. And even if I was the only person on earth, there would have still been Christmas. Think about it. And then the purpose is that we live in peace with not just each other, but also in peace with God. Think about that as we dwell over the next couple of days. Now I'll actually pause here for a moment and just recap all that I've been sharing about the story of how we dwell about the elements